Every year, roughly 3 million students graduate college and enter the workforce, all hoping that they've been prepared for the proverbial real world. At the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, the students are prepared in part through high-impact practices.
Because many of our students come from the state of Maryland, to the surprise of many, most of them have not been outside of the home state of Maryland. And through our study travel HIP experience, we've had students go to New Orleans, to Washington, D.C., to Brooklyn, to New York City, Manhattan, and they're able to put some perspective to what they're reading. It brings the readings to life in ways that they otherwise would not have had the opportunity to do.
Students in the fashion department recently took trips to Philadelphia and New York, bringing their studies to life.
So using these high-impact practices by going to Philadelphia University or taking trips to New York City so they can get to see what's really going on in the fashion industry will really help them to figure out what they want to do in fashion.
We saw a number of professions, so it wasn't just one type of profession. We saw stylists, buyers, creative directors, people who worked in wholesale, people who worked in magazines, so we got the full fashion experience. We got to talk to professionals that were like close to our age, and it helped me realize that that was my competition and they were doing like a lot more things than I was doing, so it helped me realize that I needed to step my game up.
These travels have helped transform students' self-perception. Abigail Chambers and Brandon Jackson are agriculture majors, members of the campus group Manners, and they recently attended a conference in Jacksonville, Florida.
I was going into it open, didn't have any like leadership experience, but when I went to the conference, I went to like I think 2 or 3 different leadership workshops and like how to be like a good leader, and I got so much out of it. And today is our manager's election, and I'm running for vice president. So that like they were even talking about like elections before, and I'm like, I'm not running. I'm gonna be a general member. That was like before we went to Jacksonville, and I came back and I was like, Carl, is it too late for me to sign up for the executive board? He was like, no, come on in, Abby.
To appreciate agriculture or to appreciate anything, you can't just talk about it. You know, you have to be hands-on, you have to be involved, and you have to be engaged. And in agriculture, to really appreciate agriculture, you have to be engaged hands-on, you have to get your hands into the dirt. And so I value all my experiences and the exposure I have gotten since joining my organization, Manners.
Other students recently participated in an alternative spring break service project, offering assistance to communities in New Orleans, still dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Another life-changing experience.
Yes, and to be honest, living on the Eastern Shore, I had no idea that because you stopped hearing about it, so you assumed everything was okay. The government took care of it and everything. But apparently when you went there, it was just, you heard the community, the locals, they even talked about how really the government hasn't really done anything for them. Basically, in the volunteer work we did is what they were supposed to do. Like, nobody was out there restoring the sidewalks, nobody was out there planting grasses, nobody out there trying to prevent erosion. Like, we were the volunteers did most of the work. It was a real place where a disaster happened, and now we're just trying to reconstruct it little by little. And again, the government's not doing anything, but the locals are. So basically, you're kind of becoming a part of that community and building up that community. And you know, one thing I got out of it is you realize that the community really appreciates what outsiders do for them.
Living with other people during this experience not only helped me learn about different perspectives, because there were times where we weren't in the field, we weren't working, we weren't doing that community service work, and we just had time to ourselves. And we had a lot of discussions like about Black Lives Matter or about just issues that pertain to us. And having so many educated individuals in one place definitely gave us the opportunity to learn about each other and to learn about other perspectives that we probably wouldn't otherwise know.
Education can no longer be seen as the bricks and mortar on a college campus. That education now has to be seen as the library, the laboratory, the classroom, the studio as the entire world or United States. And if we're lucky enough someday, we'll have high impact practices overseas.
While study abroad may be a goal for the future, the stateside opportunities are nearly as impactful.
The benefits that accrue from these kinds of experiences are very similar to study abroad, except for things that you wouldn't expect to happen. You know, the people who study abroad for a semester or a full year, they have a much deeper familiarity, understanding, appreciation for the host culture, of course. And they learn more about the language, obviously, if you're in a country that speaks a language other than English. So, but except for those two, very important, but except for those two kinds of outcomes, all the other things that matter, dealing with people in terms of problems that are unscripted, finding your way around in a new environment, all the other kinds of benefits also accrue with shorter-term study-away, travel study experiences. All students, no matter their background, get a boost, if you will, in their performance. That is, they benefit more. But certain groups of students seem to have much larger compensatory effects when they participate, and they include students of color, as you said, but students from low-income backgrounds, students who are first in family to attend, students who are less well prepared academically for college. You know, when you can identify those variables in a data set and see what happens, it's absolutely remarkable.
One Eastern Shore student may be a pioneer of sorts. Dominic Copeland recently took advantage of an impromptu speaking engagement and earned a scholarship and a trip to China.
When would Dr. Joyce Payne come to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore? Probably it's not likely that she would have done that this academic year. So by us presenting opportunities for Dominic to go to a HIP in Baltimore, she had the opportunity to meet Dr. Joyce Payne, the founder of the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund, to offer him an opportunity for not just a scholarship, but to be the first student that she selected for a trip to China.
She approached me and said, I want you in my program. And you can send me your transcript, your resume, and we'll put it under review. I also want to invite you to China because we've got 10 students and we need you in one of the slots. And I'm just like, all right, cool, thanks. And I'm very grateful. I really am grateful. I'm just really glad that that was just thrown at me.
None of this happens without support and proper funding. Dr. Jason D'Souza testified before the United States Senate's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee in May of 2014 on innovation and best practices at minority-serving institutions. During his testimony, he discussed the importance of resources for these campuses to engage students in high-impact practices. Those resources are in place and utilized at UMES.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to submit a proposal to the Office of Civil Rights to make the University of Maryland Eastern Shore more comparable and competitive to our peers. And I incorporated high impact practices, and as a result of that, the Office of Civil Rights approved it, and we have considerable resources to get students and particularly faculty to drive the high impact practices that create learning opportunities that students would not otherwise have.
Would like to thank everybody at the school that gave us the opportunity to go, because without them we wouldn't have the monetary aid or any help to go and help them in New Orleans. And on top of that, I think I was very lucky to be able to be there and help everybody else. So when it comes to filling in the gap that others haven't, having me do as little as I can to help the citizens in the Ninth Ward did feel very good.